I never thought a night like this would mean anything. Just another small get-together at my friend's house, a few drinks, some laughter, nothing memorable. But by the time everyone else had gone, I found myself still sitting at her kitchen table, his mother's kitchen table, with the last of the empty glasses scattered between us. The house felt too quiet without the noise of people. It was just me and her. She leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely, her dark hair falling over one shoulder. For a moment, she looked more like someone who had let the night carry her away than the woman who usually carried the night for everyone else. She was in her mid-40s, but it wasn't her age I noticed, it was the way she seemed, untouchable. "You don't have to rush," she said, her voice softer than it had been all evening. "It's late. You can stay for a bit if you'd like." I nodded, trying not to seem eager. "I don't mind helping clean up first." She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. "You don't have to. Sit. I'll handle it." But she didn't move. She stayed right there, leaning against the counter, watching me like she wasn't sure what to do with me. I couldn't stop my eyes from following her when she finally did turn, rinsing the glasses slowly, her sleeves rolled up just enough to show her wrists. There was nothing deliberate about it, and maybe that's why it unsettled me. I'd never thought of her that way, or maybe I had, quietly, in passing moments, but buried it before it could mean anything. Now there was no one else around to bury it under. "You've grown up," she said suddenly, glancing back at me. It was the kind of line older relatives might throw at you at a wedding or holiday dinner, but there was something in the way she said it that made my chest tighten. I didn't know how to answer. I laughed once, awkwardly. "Guess that happens." She smiled faintly and turned back to the sink. "Guess it does." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just noticeable. I tapped my finger against the table, wondering if I should stand, if I should say goodbye, if I should thank her for letting me stay. But instead, I stayed still, listening to the sound of water running, watching the way her shoulders curved slightly forward, as if she was suddenly tired of holding herself together. "Long night?" I asked finally, just to break the quiet. "You could say that." She didn't turn around, but her tone had shifted, softer again, almost thoughtful. "Sometimes it's harder when everyone leaves. The noise keeps you from noticing how quiet it really is." That line stayed in me. It wasn't just about the house. I wanted to say something back, something that would matter, but my words jammed in my throat. All I could do was look at her, at the curve of her jaw as she turned off the water, at the way she hesitated with the towel in her hand like she'd forgotten what she meant to do. Then her eyes met mine, steady, unblinking. That was when I felt it, not the rush of something obvious, not lust, not even comfort. Just the realization that this was the first time I'd ever really been alone with her, and she was letting the moment last longer than it should. I opened my mouth to say something, I didn't even know what yet, when suddenly her phone buzzed on the counter. She looked at it, didn't pick it up, then looked back at me. And the silence between us became something I couldn't name. Her phone buzzed again, a sharp vibration against the countertop, and she finally reached over to silence it. She didn't answer, just turned the screen face down with a small shake of her head. "Persistent?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "Something like that." She brushed the thought away, though the way her shoulders stiffened told me it wasn't nothing. She came back to the table, sitting across from me now. The distance between us felt smaller than it should have been. For a moment neither of us spoke. She picked at the seam of a paper napkin left on the table, and I found myself studying the lines of her face in the quiet. There was beauty there, sure, but also something more complicated, a weight she carried even when she smiled. "You ever regret things?" she asked suddenly. I blinked, caught off guard. "Depends. What kind of things?" She shrugged, her eyes focused on the napkin she kept tearing into smaller pieces. "Choices. People. Letting things pass you by." I hesitated. At 22, Regret wasn't something I thought about often, but the way she said it made me feel like maybe I should. I guess I regret not saying things when I should have. Like, keeping quiet too much. That got a small laugh out of her, not mocking, just knowing. Silence is easy. It feels safe. But it also steals years before you even notice. Her words sat between us, heavier than they should have been. I wanted to ask her what she regretted. If it had something to do with the phone she'd ignored. But instead I said, "You sound like you've lived it." She met my eyes then. Steady. I have. I didn't push. She didn't offer more. But it was enough, the kind of answer that carried more truth than a whole explanation. The clock on the wall ticked louder than before, each second pushing me deeper into the strange tension I couldn't name. She wasn't just my friend's mom anymore. She wasn't just the woman who made sure we ate when we stayed too long playing video games in the living room. She was herself. A person I'd never really seen until now. And maybe she saw me the same way. "Your dad?" I asked quietly, before I could stop myself. She leaned back, arms crossing loosely. "He hasn't been around for years. Left when my son was in middle school." Her tone was careful, as though she'd practiced making it sound like it didn't matter. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Sometimes absence is easier than presence." She smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't. I swallowed, the weight of what she carried pressing into me in ways I didn't expect. This wasn't just an age gap. This wasn't just the risk of crossing a line. It was that she was vulnerable, and I shouldn't want to be the one filling that space. And yet, the silence stretched again. I could feel myself fidget, my hand brushing the edge of the table, until she reached over without thinking and stilled it, her fingertips resting lightly against mine. It wasn't deliberate. It wasn't careful. But she didn't move away. And neither did I. The clock kept ticking. The world stayed quiet. And all I could think was, this is where everything begins to change. Her hand lingered on mine longer than it should have. Long enough for me to feel her warmth, long enough for my pulse to stumble. Then, as if realizing what she'd done, she pulled back quickly, folding her hands together in her lap. "We shouldn't," she started, her voice low. I leaned forward slightly. "I know." But neither of us moved. The room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that magnifies every small sound. The ticking clock. The hum of the refrigerator. My breath catching when she looked at me again. "I'm your friend's mother," she whispered, as though reminding herself. "And I'm not a kid anymore," I said before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, but no words came. The air between us grew heavier, filled with all the things we weren't supposed to say. The front door clicked. A key turning in the lock. Her eyes widened, and she shot up from her chair. "He's home early," she hissed, glancing at me. I stood too quickly, nearly knocking my chair back. My friend, her son, walked into the kitchen, headphones around his neck, surprised to see me still there. "Dude, you didn't leave yet?" he asked, grinning as he grabbed a soda from the fridge. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, your mom said I could hang out for a bit." She was already at the sink, pretending to rinse a glass, her back to both of us. If he noticed the tension, he didn't say anything. He just cracked open his soda and wandered toward his room. "Night, Mom." "Later, man." The door shut behind him, muffling the music that started up seconds later. I exhaled slowly, my chest tight. She turned back to me, eyes wide, breath unsteady. "That was close," I muttered. Her hand gripped the counter, knuckles pale. "This is exactly why it can't happen." "Why what can't happen?" I asked, even though we both knew. She didn't answer, only pressed her lips together, shaking her head slightly. The silence between us thickened again. My thoughts raced, walk away, leave now, end it before it started. But then she looked at me, really looked, and I couldn't move. I stepped closer without meaning to. Just a half step, but it felt like everything. She didn't back away. "We should stop," she whispered. "Then tell me to," I said, my voice rougher than I meant. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, but the words never came. Instead, the tiniest shift, her hand brushing against mine as if by accident, but staying there, trembling slightly. I leaned in. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the heat between us, the pull neither of us could name. And then she turned her head sharply, breaking the moment, her hands slipping away. "You need to go," she said, her tone shaky, almost pleading. But her eyes told me she didn't want me to. And that was the worst part. Because I didn't want to go either. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed replaying every second of her touch, her eyes, the words she never said. By morning I told myself I'd stay away. Put distance between us before it became something I couldn't undo. But 2 days later, I was back at their house. My friend had begged me to come over, some new game he wanted to show me. And of course, she was there, moving through the kitchen like nothing had happened, as though she hadn't nearly let me close the other night. I tried to keep my eyes on the TV, on the game, on anything but her. But every time she walked past, my chest tightened. Every time her laugh drifted in from the kitchen, I felt pulled toward it. When my friend finally left to pick something up from the store, I was alone again. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "Just tired," I lied. Her gaze held mine, sharp, searching. "Is that all?" I swallowed. "Shouldn't it be?" The room seemed too small for both of us. I stood needing space, but instead found myself moving closer to her. "You've been avoiding me," she said, almost accusing, though her voice trembled. "You told me to." I shot back before I could stop myself. Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, I thought she'd turn away. But instead, she took a step toward me, closing half the distance I'd tried to keep. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "To who?" I asked. Her eyes flicked away. "To you. To my son. To everything. I don't care about fair," I said, the words slipping out raw. That stunned her. For a moment, she just stared at me, as though I'd ripped something out she'd been hiding. Then it came, not anger, not rejection, but something closer to desperation. "Do you think I don't notice? The way you look at me? The way I—" She stopped herself, biting the inside of her cheek. "The way you what?" I pressed, my voice low. Her breath shook. "The way I can't stop noticing you." Silence crashed down between us. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. She'd said it. The thing we'd both been circling, denying. And once it was out, we couldn't take it back. She closed her eyes, as if regretting every word, then opened them again. "You need to go," she whispered, the same words as before, but this time her voice broke. I should have listened. I should have left. But instead, I stepped closer until only inches separated us. Her hand twitched at her side, like she wanted to reach for me but didn't dare. My breath caught. And then, the sound of the front door unlocking. We froze. Her son's voice carried in, casual and unsuspecting. "I'm back!" And we were left standing there, too close, with everything hanging in the space between us. The sound of the door closing behind her son snapped us both apart. She turned away so fast it felt like a wound being torn open. I sat back down on the couch, trying to force my breathing steady, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. She had said it. The words that made everything impossible to ignore. The hours blurred after that. We barely spoke, keeping everything surface level while her son laughed, shouted at the TV, and filled the room with the noise that kept us safe. But beneath it, tension coiled tight, ready to snap. When I finally left, the night air hit me like a reprieve. But as I walked down the street, my phone buzzed. It was her. Don't come back for a while. It's too dangerous. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Dangerous. The word cut deep. I didn't reply. The next afternoon, I got another text. Not from her, from my friend. Hey, did my mom say anything to you? She seemed weird last night. My stomach twisted. He knew something. Maybe not the truth, but enough to suspect. I typed back quickly, nah, just tired. She probably was too. No reply came. That evening, unable to stop myself, I walked by their house. Not close enough to be obvious, but near enough to see lights on through the curtains. And that's when I froze. A man stood in the kitchen with her. He wasn't her son. He was older, broad-shouldered, leaning casually against the counter like he belonged there. She was laughing, not in the careful, guarded way I'd seen before, but freely, like she hadn't in years. I couldn't move. 1,000 questions slammed into me at once. Who was he? Why hadn't she mentioned him? Was this the reason she said it was dangerous? I stayed too long. Because suddenly she turned, her eyes flicking toward the window. Even from the street, I saw her body stiffen when she noticed me. The laugh vanished. The man followed her gaze, but she quickly touched his arm, steering him away from the window. I backed off into the shadows, heart pounding. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Don't come here. Please. I typed back this time, my fingers shaking. Who is he? Minutes dragged before her reply came. My ex-husband. He's back. And if he finds out about you. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I dropped the phone onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. Every part of me screamed to walk away, to leave this twisted mess before it exploded. But all I could think about was the look on her face when she saw me outside that window. Not anger. Not guilt. It was fear. And in that fear I realized something that scared me more than him, more than her son, more than being caught. She was afraid of losing me. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. 3 endless, restless days where every time my phone buzzed, my stomach flipped. But it was never her. I told myself it was over. That whatever this was, it had burned out the second her ex-husband stepped back into her life. But the lie barely lasted. Because the longer the silence stretched, the clearer it became. I needed to see her. Even if it destroyed me. I found myself on her doorstep late that evening. My fist hovered over the door, ready to knock, when it opened on its own. She stood there, as if she'd been waiting. Her eyes were tired, red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. She didn't look surprised to see me. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Then tell me to leave. I said the same words I'd thrown at her before. She didn't. She just stepped aside, letting me in. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No son. No ex-husband. Just us. I wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was, "You disappeared." Her lips trembled. I had to. He's staying in town. He thinks there's still something here. For the sake of my son, I didn't fight him. The words hit hard, but not as hard as the way she avoided my eyes when she said them. So you're choosing him? I said flatly. No. The word came sharp, immediate. She finally looked at me, and her voice broke. I'm choosing fear. I don't know how else to survive. We stood there, caught in the raw truth of it. Her fear. My longing. The impossible gap between us. Then what about me? I asked, my voice low, almost shaking. She closed her eyes. You make me feel alive in a way I thought I'd lost. And that terrifies me even more. The room seemed to shrink, walls pressing in with every breath. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. So this is it? We pretend none of it ever happened? Her silence answered for her. But then, her hand rose, hesitant, trembling, and brushed against my cheek. Not like before, not fleeting or accidental. Deliberate. I don't want to pretend, she whispered. But I don't know how to stop being afraid. I leaned into her touch, my chest tight. This was it. The breaking point. The moment where everything could either collapse or begin. You don't have to stop being afraid, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Just don't let it be the only thing. Her breath caught. Her lips parted. For the first time, there was no wall between us, no excuse, no silence to hide in. We hovered there, on the edge, her eyes locked on mine, her hands still against my face. And then, from outside, the sharp sound of a car door slamming echoed through the night. She froze. The moment shattered. But her hand didn't leave my cheek. Not yet. The sound of the car door outside froze us both. Her hand was still on my cheek, trembling now, as if the whole world was pushing her to let go. But she didn't. Not immediately. We stood there in the silence, listening for footsteps, for the front door to open. When nothing came, she finally pulled her hand back, pressing it against her chest like she needed to hold herself together. I can't keep living like this, she whispered. Hiding. Pretending. Letting fear decide everything for me. I swallowed hard. Then don't. Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before, not regret, not guilt. Resolve. My ex is back because he wants to rewrite history. But history doesn't rewrite itself. And I'm done carrying the weight of what he left behind. She shook her head, almost to herself. I deserve something real. Something alive. I felt the words catch in my throat, but I forced them out anyway. With me? Her silence stretched long enough to tear me apart. Then she stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. With you. The walls that had been between us for weeks finally crumbled. There was no hiding left, no excuses. Just us, standing in the dim kitchen where it had all started, finally admitting what had been growing in every glance, every silence, every almost touch. For the first time, she didn't pull back. Her hand found mine, fingers interlacing with a certainty that made my chest ache. I don't care about the rules anymore, she whispered. Not the age difference. Not what people will say. Not even the mistakes behind us. All I care about is that right now, with you, I feel seen. I squeezed her hand, the words tumbling out of me before I could stop them. And I can't stop wanting to be the one who sees you. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still questions, still risks, still the sharp edge of reality waiting outside that kitchen. But in that moment, we chose each other anyway. The sound of the car outside faded. The night grew quiet again. And for the first time, the silence didn't scare us. We stayed there, hand in hand, not rushing toward tomorrow, but finally unafraid of it. That's how it began, not with a perfect kiss or some grand confession, but with two people finally letting themselves stop running. Messy. Flawed. Real. And sometimes, that's all love needs to be. Speech Balloon, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?